the grass is always green on the other side, is there? Sometimes when you're inside, or you feel like you're in the frying pan, it comes back to, I think a lot of that comes back to relationships and, how we build a culture around people and value people within Movember. If I think back in my early career, what I learned from that was some of the hardest, toughest projects I ever worked on were some of the most fun.
This is the AI First podcast, hosted by me, John Herstein, Chief Customer Officer at Box. Join me for real conversations with CIOs and tech leaders about reimagining work with the power of content and intelligence and putting AI at the core of enterprise transformation. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the AI First podcast, where we explore how organizations are transforming their operations and impact through artificial intelligence. I'm your host, John Herstein, Chief Customer Officer at Box. Today, we're diving into how technology can drive meaningful social change with Graham Link, Chief Technology Officer at Movember, an organization on a mission to change the face of men's health. From its humble beginnings with just 30 Mo Bros in 2003, Movember has grown into a global movement, engaging over 6 million supporters across 20 countries and funding over 1,250 men's health projects in the areas of mental health, suicide prevention, prostate cancer, and testicular cancer. Graham brings a unique perspective as a tech leader who's proving that AI can amplify human impact at scale. Whether it's supporting the 10 million men living with prostate cancer, addressing mental health challenges, or helping young men facing testicular cancer, Movember shows us that cutting-edge technology and social good aren't mutually exclusive. Today, we'll explore how Graham's team uses everything from AI-powered code modernization to creative campaigns like their viral mustache generator, all while maintaining the fun, human-centric culture that makes Movember so unique. Let's discover how AI is helping transform and save men's lives around the world. Welcome, Graham.
Thanks, John. Pleasure to be here.
I'm really excited for our conversation. You may have noticed that we're only 4 days into Movember. We should be airing this podcast during Movember, but it is November 4th here, and I'm already well on the way to a really impressive mustache.
The impressive Mo, as we call it. I'm on day 4. Well, I'm actually in Australia, John. So day 5 for me, and I've got a bit of a shade here, but I don't grow a great Mo, but that's part of the fun of it. So,
well, if you work really hard, you can aspire to something like this. So
yeah, I would love something like that. It'd be, if I could pull that off, I would definitely be doing it. Our country director in the US does have one bit like that. It is very impressive.
Well, why don't you give people just a little bit of perspective on the organization, but also your role and the scope of your role at Movember?
Yeah, sure. So, as you mentioned, Movember is a global men's health charity, originally starting in Australia 23 years ago now, but very quickly grew all around the globe. And so there's 2 parts to Movember. There's the movement and the fundraising side to Movember, and that happens every November, officially in 20 countries, but it happens all over the world. And we have supporters, in all corners of the globe. And it's a really amazing awareness opportunity around men's health and to talk about our cause areas. The other side to Movember is our health institute and real world delivery of health outcomes that we deliver. So we focus in prostate cancer, testicular cancer, men's health in general, mental health, particularly young men's health. So we're very much in the preventative detective phases of mental health and support work that we can do around that. We have a collective impact model. So we partner with organizations all over the globe, using some of those funds that we raise through Movember and other funds as well that come in from government or other organizations that are contributing. My role inside Movember is running what we call the Technos Group. So we're headquartered in Australia, and we do operate a global platform. So part of my remit is all of that fundraising technology. And I think we may talk a bit about that later, but Movember back 20 odd years ago started the peer-to-peer fundraising play. And so there's lots of them in the market these days, but the technology that we started back then, we've continued to build and deliver our kind of epic Movember campaign experience that you get when you participate in Movember. The other side to my role is running the digital technology for enabling the organization and all our employees around the globe, as well as those health impacts. So in areas where we are making technology investment in health, parts of my team work into that space and support those initiatives. And they vary from clinical quality cancer registries through to really fun digital experiences for NEDs.
That's a really broad portfolio of initiatives that the organization is working on. And it's easy to understand, Graham, like how you would be motivated by the mission of Movember. But I'm also curious, what drives your passion for investing in the technology and AI side of things, which we're going to get into. But aside from the mission, why are you so excited about technology?
I started as a technologist straight out of university. I did postgrad in computing, and it's always glued and stuck onto me. When we talk about AI and technology, I can say, this it feels like a bit of a reset in my career. It's the first time that I can remember since the dot-com kind of growth and bubble that we've had back in the early 2000s. That the rule book's being flipped, and at a time where probably be expecting to rely on a lot of my experiences and know-how, everything's changing around us, and so I'm super excited about that, John. I think it's an amazing opportunity for all of us in the industry, and it's refreshing. There's some real change coming through in the technology here that is allowing us to be better. At Movember, I think AI allows us to be better.
And we're going to talk about some of those ways. But it's a really interesting point that you're making. Like you expect at this point in your career, I think we've probably been both working for a couple decades or more. That hey, you're an expert, you really understand technology, and then everything changes. We're all trying to figure it out together, right? Yeah, I just think it's interesting for those of us who've been in the technology world for a couple decades or more, that we thought probably at this point in our career we would be experts in technology and really understand the things and be able to pass that on to others. And the reality is, with AI, everything's changed so fast in the last couple of years. I'm not sure any of us are experts in anything anymore. I don't know. How do you feel?
Yeah, it's really interesting, John. If you go back the last decade, I've been working with AI with teams around machine learning. The difference that we've seen the last 18 months, 24 months at tops is just the accessibility of these generative AI solutions and the technology that's now being built on that, and how much it's coming to the workplace. And it's at the engineer and at the business operator level, but all the way up to the boardroom. And, just the last 6 months alone, the narrative has changed significantly in the space for us. We get a lot more questions and, seeking to learn at a board level as to how Movember is going to adopt AI and what we are or aren't doing around that, and in industry as well. So there's this pace of change along with the potential of the change that's really, really new. And I don't think we saw this, say, as the internet was emerging, we could see the potential of it, but the pace of change was slower compared to where we are today.
Yeah, the pace is unlike I think anything any of us have seen before. We'll get into some more details, but can you start with a couple quick examples of how you're using AI already to make a difference on the ground?
So the ones that we're very aware of and organizing, and then we find out about the ones that have got some grassroots and swelling that have happened, and we sort of have to wrap our arms around quite quickly to understand what's going on in that space, particularly with Movember being a more global organization and a lot of supporters out there as well. Those that we're really invested in at the moment. The biggest one would be our engineering modernization program. So I mentioned earlier, Movember started its journey over 20 years ago building fundraising technology. It didn't exist in the marketplace, and over that time, the platform has been improved every year, every campaign. We see new features, and a lot of it's being rewritten and rebuilt, and it lives in the cloud these days. But there is still parts of that technology that are 15 years old. And so we're using AI to really help us, because you don't have the folk around the team anymore that knew that code base, modernize that code base in our target architecture in a more cloud native format, and accelerate that work so that we can kind of get done with that. And modernization is difficult and can go wrong. And, Movember, we operate within a cost cap, with, less resources than typically you might see in a kind of digital business this scale. So, we rely on partners as well in that space. And we've really doubled down on AI to help with that modernization. It's now rippling through all of our engineering. So not just modernization, but new feature development. And our engineers have really embraced it, really led towards it. We now have our QAs and business analysts and product managers and others all leaning into this space as well and looking to do, well, how do we how do we use this going forward? But it hasn't been easy. It's not like we've just flipped the switch on and it's worked for modernization. It's been really tough to get it to work. But what we are now achieving is phenomenal.
So on the engineering side, it's about efficiency, modernization, and really taking advantage of these capabilities to get more done faster. And to be honest, I'm hearing this theme a lot in the nonprofit world, given how squeezed everyone is from a resourcing perspective. To be able to take advantage of these tools is really pretty powerful. But there's also some fun stuff that you've done, including a generative using generative AI for the mustache photo generator. So can you talk a little bit about that and what the impact of something like that has been?
So that's actually had two go. So last year was the first time that came out, and that was led out by UK and European team, and it really got a grassroots swell around that. And it was about playing with the fun side of AI. It was, to how for those that are trying to grow a mo or can't grow a mo, it was able to take a photo, rock something pretty iconic and cool on your face, and share it on your socials and share awareness of my vendor, and that's what it did. It was great. This year we've gone at it again. This time with another partner of ours. And so you'll start to see promotion of that coming through. And I have to say, this year's ones are really awesome. I was trialing it with my kids and my wife over the weekend, and it generates some pretty awesome modes. I just wish it would generate a really, I could grow the one it generates for me because it looks awesome on screen, but it's not.
You get inspired to that. Just to be really clear, this is not an AI generated mo.
Yeah.
So just so everyone, all of the watchers, the viewers know, this is totally real. So that's on the fun side. And then you've done something actually similar to something that we did at Box, which is centralizing a lot of your support documentation to a Box Hub, and then promoting that to your users as a way for people to get more support in a self-service model. Can you talk a little bit about that? What the maybe genesis of that was, and what the benefits have been?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm talking about box hubs here, and we jumped on that pretty soon as they come out, pretty quickly. Quite exciting for us. So, like a lot of organizations, we have a lot of unstructured data that proliferates throughout the business, and obviously within technology and support as well. And so, the efficiency played for us in using the box hub was being able to connect up all of that unstructured data that is in all sorts of places, really kind of hub over the top of it and expose it to our internal teams. So if somebody needs to acquire a new laptop or needs to understand how they can, acquire some new software or get access to a platform, they can ask the hub, and the hub pretty much will find it for them. We've done a lot of work over the years gone by of documenting all our procedures, all the information. It's just people struggle to find the information. No one's going to go clicking through folders. If it's on our kind of intranet, right, we have something called Stash. If it's on there, they might find it. I'd say that more often they wouldn't, but the Box Hub now is linked straight through there. So they can go straight to the hub, do that search, find something relevant. And if it's not relevant, then they can automatically correct it and that will flow through to us.
So you still have the option of, someone still logging a case and getting support that way, but this is probably heading a lot of that off. Well, from an efficacy perspective, what are you measuring? Is it user experience? Is it the number of support cases you get internally? Or how do you know? So it sounds like a better experience, but how do you know this is having impact?
So two things. So we test internal engagement with our employees and understand how well the service desk is supporting the internal base, and that's across the globe. We also look at all our tickets and ticket quality and, so volume and type of issues that are coming through. We can see the trends within there. So largely, as with many organizations, there's a lot of self-serve opportunity within that type of ticket flow. And so that's what we measure. We see more and more of that going to the box. I'd say we're still on a learning journey with our organization as well, on even getting them to the starting line of self-help and how do you get to the box hub in the first instance. It's Movember, and we're very much a people first organization. So there's always the temptation, but in reality, we work in different time zones, and there are people in corners of the globe looking for help. That would be 3 a.m. my team's support hours here, and they can now self-serve off that. So that's been really powerful. We are using it in other contexts as well. So I think the hub architecture that kind of sits on top of your unstructured data is a really powerful concept. And what I liked, we didn't have to move data around and files around, etc. We could just really wrap it around.
Yeah, we think that's a huge benefit that you don't have additional kind of content sprawl that could happen by saying, "Oh, we also need to make it accessible over here in this place or that place." So you sort of point to it and it works. Are you already thinking about other uses for that capability for content management use cases or knowledge sharing or anything else?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think our box data is around 40 terabytes, which it's not huge for some orgs, but it's pretty big for us. And, when I look at our operating model and how Movember goes about, let's say in health and um, our investments in that space, as you can imagine, an organization of 20 odd years, we've had a lot of people come and join, do some time with us, and then move on. And I think there's a real risk in that type of environment where a lot of knowledge gets lost in the individuals as you move through. So, like over 10 years, you might have seen 3 or 4 people come into a specific domain or a role, and really unlikely that a person in that role today knows everything that the person 10 years had known. And so in some cases though, that's a missed opportunity. And November's been doing amazing work for a long time. So how do we make it more accessible to all our employees? Like how do we remember this organizational information, make it part of our DNA so that if you join tomorrow, John, you could be up to speed with the last 20 years of November. And I think you've had Box running for about 15 or so years. There's a lot of information in there. Like, how do we make it available? Again, you're never going to go through all fold structures and be hundreds and hundreds. So you've got to surface it. So using it in that context. So for instance, having like a specialized prostate cancer hub that sits across all our information in prostate cancer, that then also allows us to not just get to the files, but like digest the information that's within there and surface that up is incredibly powerful. That's where I see
We
that's where I see the evolution for us as an organization.
Yeah, I think that's a great use case for onboarding new employees. We've also done something similar with some of our key roles where we've created onboarding hubs for new employees. Because to your point, there's a lot of built up institutional knowledge that new person that just doesn't have access to in their brain, right? But if you can make it easy for them to access it, previous decks from our all hands meetings and strategy decks and, dashboards and reports that they wouldn't have had access to previously, and now they could just go ask those questions. We found it to be a pretty powerful thing. So I love that use case. How about things like localization and translation, given the 20 plus countries of presence that you have? Have you started thinking about leveraging AI around content for that?
Not so much on the unstructured data because the majority of our content would be in English. So it just happens that the majority of the countries we operate in, that is first language that we have within there. But absolutely, context of our website and how we turn up around the globe, then yeah, a lot of it isn't in English, and how we use AI. We're exploring opportunities at the moment in that space as to how we can better translate and expose our content um, in other languages, as well as into other AI models. And, we're moving beyond the SEO and space and into these kind of newer concepts around consuming your information in a Q&A type format into the LLMs of the world that are out there. So definitely in that space.
There's some really, really cool use cases, and I can see just a lot of business benefit coming from those. So, and I know you'll continue to explore more. I want to shift gears a little bit and talk a bit about leadership, how you drive some of this change, driving change in culture and so forth. So maybe I'll start with, Movember's not a very old organization. I just had a podcast recording with an organization that's 150 years old. So they've got a lot of kind of built up legacy. You've got the benefit of not having that. But I'm curious, how has the organization built a culture that really embraces transformation and specifically in this case, digital transformation?
In parts because we needed to, and so when I joined November and looked at it, it looked a lot more like a startup scale up
Mhm.
structure within there. And what I mean by that is, you know, um, brilliant people all there for a real purpose. They all want to be there, number one, and really prepared to wear multiple hats. You've got to be able to, you know, jump out your day role and pick up other kind of oars and support the team in completing whatever that program or initiative we're going. And so we've always, been quite bold. I think November and willing to challenge, and our values speak to that around fun and change agent and accountable, responsible. And so it's really embedded in, I think, who we hire and how we think and how we operate. We're our biggest own critic, and we're always pushing to be better and really driving hard in that space. Um, but the team I've got on the ground within technology and the broader Movember team, I think, they're there because they're up for the challenge. And, the status quo doesn't work in Movember. The world changes too quickly around us, and we need to adopt to that as well, as we do every year.
I love that you have fun as a core value. And I would say dealing with technology is not always fun, although these days it is pretty fun dealing with what's new and the innovation. But how do you sort of maintain that fun core value, but also deal with the reality of tech and the challenges that come along with that?
Yeah, grass is always green on the other side, is there? Sometimes when you're inside, or you feel like you're in the frying pan, it comes back to, I think a lot of that comes back to relationships and, how we build a culture around people and value people within Movember. If I think back in my early career, what I learned from that was some of the hardest, toughest projects I ever worked on were some of the most fun and the best because of the people we had. And so I think Movember wouldn't exist if it wasn't for Movember supporters and for the operators of Movember and people that work within the organization. And so we put that up, as a high priority for us. There's other stuff we do. So, like we work in a hybrid situation now. So post COVID, probably need to stop saying that now because it's just a new reality. But we work in this hybrid situation, which makes it more challenging to connect. And we have distribution as well. So across Australia, where a lot of the tech team are, but also in some other markets. Uh, so we're really deliberate to make sure that we have scheduled get-togethers. We always, we start meetings, always make sure there's a 5 minute a social connection within that. And we encourage and allow our employees to kind of come up with sort of wacky, fun things to do and ideas. And so walking into our office is quite interesting on Sundays. So yeah, you never know what to, expect.
I'd like to come visit on my next trip.
We should. Some of the parties with the dress ups are pretty epic. There's a lot of effort that goes into those, but it is genuinely a lot of fun. So, but it's tough as well. And so it's not just laughing bugles, that the work is hard.
Right.
Work is kind of purposeful and rewarding and the people side are fun.
Well, and I think when you've got a mission-driven organization like you do, and you've got, I think the benefit of again being a relatively young organization, I suspect your culture sort of naturally embraces change, but change is often hard for people. So I'm just sort of curious too, how do you think about driving change in the organization? Is that easy? Does it come naturally, or do you have to be very deliberate about things like, okay, AI is coming along, we want to adopt these technologies. How do we actually get people to do that? What do you do to make that happen?
Yeah, there's a couple of things to that. We have to be very deliberate. I think change is really hard
Yeah.
inside, and part of that is because of the pace that we operate in, where our focus is. If you think about the fundraising side, we've got one big opportunity a year to do for fundraising. And so, for instance, we're in day 5 of 2025 November, but we're already planning and scoping 2026 and moving and racing towards that piece. And so when change kind of comes in and disrupts those processes, that's really quite hard. And particularly if you're talking about AI and use of, new technology, new ways of thinking, even approaching problems, you sort of have to make that space for it within your organization and within work that we're doing to learn and, adopt that technologies, make a lot of mistakes and get the value in it. So for us, we have to be really deliberate. We over communicate a lot of things, and some of that probably results in a bit too much information at times. But usually the feedback is, "Oh, we didn't know about this," or we did, if only if I knew that was going on or that was available. And so over communicating, and we try and spread it around the organization as well. So, for instance, when we have our global town hall calls, so we'll run 2 of those a month. And we'll spread it around the organization who's hosting it and doing that, make sure the markets are represented within it. But not easy, John. And I think we continue to learn as we go here.
Is there anything in particular you found with AI specifically that you've had to do differently from a change management perspective? Any kind of different messaging or sentiment that you need to communicate?
Definitely with AI. So a couple of things. We, first of all, got more stakeholders involved. So, we've got a lot of employees, all ages as well. So you mentioned earlier, we haven't been around that long. We've got people straight out of university through to have completed a career and now working in a more purposeful space. And so we've got, we've got employees coming in with prior experience or expectations of using this technology, or maybe some concerns about this technology and not sure what it means for them. So we need to manage that group. But we've got, board as well and execs who are wanting to know, how are we using this technology? What is our plan and our strategy around it? A year ago, I had planned, John, to develop our AI and data strategy and, take quite a traditional approach to doing that. We'd spend a couple of months really doing discovery around that, identify where we want to be, what's the plan. And I quickly realized this space is moving so quickly that framework wasn't going to work for us. So we adopted a much more flexible framework. And we went to one of the core tenets in Movember of cross-functional working. And so this kind of addresses how we do part of the change. We put in play a senior cross-functional working group for AI inside Movember, representing all the different parts. So be it from legal, the institute, technology, fundraising, marketing, etc. And as we've convened that group and we've effectively built a AI enablement framework with that group of how we're rolling AI out into the organization. So having a framework is towards allowing our employees to experiment safely where it makes sense, but also, if we're using AI with sensitive data, let's say in a health context, ensuring appropriate guardrails and governance is in there. So getting that cross-functional working group is really important. That also acts as a connection point to our employee base through their own departments. And so someone in fundraising can go to the fundraising representative on there and have a conversation about how do they get something on the ground and take it forward. And so I chair that with the CEO, and I think having that senior executive support from the top down of AI potentially makes us better. And so, we want to lean into this, but in the right ways.
That's a really interesting structure. And it sounds like, every organization, it feels like to me has, built or expanded their governance process to include aspects of, how do we think about AI and bringing AI into the business. This sounds a little bit less like governance and more about ideation, brainstorming, visibility, that sort of thing. Is there also a touch of governance, or like what's the full scope of that board?
It's up both, John. So first session we ran with our working group was a mindset session. And it was
Okay.
all around what is the potential of AI? How are others using it? And really try and level up the understanding of the group of this is where we're at today. Even if you've been doing some stuff or seeing some stuff with AI, maybe at home, playing with it a little bit here and there. This is what's actually possible right now and what we're seeing in industry, both nonprofit, but also commercial sectors, and what's going on with that. So we did the level up and we did some opportunity identification. We very quickly then switched on to get this stuff through, we're going to need governance. So try
Right.
and make more governance light, but fit for purpose. But the internal tussle we had, John, on the governance is we already have governance for technology, and AI is not
Right.
one as of existing governance. But we've had to make it so clear by breaking out of that and just extending the existing policies we have and existing kind of reporting lines and forums or reviews. And so, for instance, like, doing a supplier assurance assessment, which we would do for any new supply, being very deliberate that if there's an AI platform coming in, it has to go through this process so that those in the organization that are looking to implement their AI idea understand this is how we do it and don't sort of, they may not typically have interacted with technology that much in the past, but in this context with AI, that may well be a lot more frequently. So yeah, we've had to bring both sides to it. And then, so the working group will sit across both of those. We've also built an enablement team under that. The enablement actually is hands-on helping projects with inside Movember bring their AI kind of initiatives to life.
This is a really fantastic structure because what I've seen a lot of these organizations wind up with a governance committee that's sort of become the thing that slows things down. And it feels like this has at least three purposes. One is to come up with these ideas and socialize them. Two is to, impose governance as appropriate. And then the third is the enablement piece that you talked about. So I would imagine people look at that group as something that's there to help as opposed to I'm trying to do something with AI and I'm being told no.
Yeah, absolutely. And the enablement framework that we have allows people to understand the risk of what they're doing. And then based on the risk category, though, how they need to interact with governance or not. We also have a register for AI, so you can check that and go, okay, well, let's say it's Vox, we're using Vox and we're good to use it for this kind of data. As well, we can use Vox for highly confidential data. And maybe they want to build an AI workflow in context of Vox. And so that'd be something that we have in our register. They may look at that and go, it's actually already been done. They'll have a step to record the new use case, but effectively it's a fast process for them to get to implementation. There can be others, John, that require ethics approval and they're slow by nature. And so we'll have a bit of conservatism in spending too much money early unless we know this idea is going to flow through, but you've got to do enough in order to get some of those hops through. But that could happen whether it's AI or not. But they're just part of how we go in technology in health.
I think a lot of organizations would benefit from thinking about a structure like that. So I don't know if you all are thinking about open sourcing that in any way, shape, or form, but I think
I haven't thought about it, but always happy to have a conversation on it and share our learnings at some point for sure. And I think we're still learning.
Sure.
Where it's just remarkable how quickly the space moves. So yeah, let's have a chat 6 months to see how it's evolved, because I suspect it would have changed a fair bit as we go. That actually is one of the underlying tenets of our framework, is that this is a point in time right now. And even the membership of the working group is a point in time right now, and fully expect it to evolve over the next year as Movember evolves to use AI.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. You mentioned risk a couple times in the context of governance, and I wanted to kind of point you to a study that was done pretty recently, University of Melbourne and KPMG. The study was called Trust Attitudes and the Use of Artificial Intelligence. And they found that 48% of employees admit to uploading sensitive company information into public AI tools, and over half present AI-generated content as their own, which is pretty shocking in a business context. I think we all worry about that in an academic setting, but in a business context, it's pretty shocking. I guess I'm sort of wondering, for you as a CTO that is embracing AI, how are you balancing empowering the team and encouraging them to use tools and get the benefit of the tools, with making sure that the usage is responsible and ethical and secure and private?
Yeah, great question. And I think in one of our prior chats, John, you had a phrase which I've used since and I love, which is bring your own AI. We used to think about bring your own device. We still think about bring your own device. We've got technology solutions for that.
No.
And now we're seeing bring your own AI. I don't think it manifested in other technologies as much. Like no one was necessarily bringing their own emails,
Right. Or your own CRM or ERP, right?
Yeah, maybe pockets of something somewhere, not on that scale. And that report that you mentioned, I read that too. And those stats are global, and across a lot of markets and what's going on within there. So, look, I think there are obviously technical controls and things that we can do within existing policy, and we do some of that. So we deliberately do stop certain types of information being uploaded into unauthorized platforms. But I don't think that can stem the tide. There's too many ways you can use these platforms,
Sure.
including on your personal mobile and how you might be doing it. And so education is fundamental for this. And so having really clear education to our employees on what's okay, what's not okay. That's been really leaning into, and that's actually a big part of that enablement framework on what you can do. We're very quickly moving to put the right tools in the hands, and we've been running a pilot on some generative AI platforms for the broader employee base, which has been fantastic, and a lot of positivity and upside to that. So I think getting the right tools, people will go towards a space where there's a gap, and people see a lot of value in this technology. So plugging that gap, but it comes with a cost. And so for us as well, it's not being just, I don't want to just throw money at this. We wanted to understand the value that comes from it, and then how we run like a dividend investment model so that our AI at Movember is funded by productivity improvement within your current.
But it sounds like a combination of policy guidelines for folks, but then also providing them the tools you have validated, that has gone through your committee and that you feel comfortable with. And if you're doing all three of those things, then I think you put your employees in a better position to do the right thing.
Absolutely. They come into it. And I think the AI part comes at different angles as well. Like we recently just did cybersecurity training again against the whole employee base, but they were AI-based cybersecurity training pieces. So talking about the use of these tools, but also how these tools are now being used, for instance, to conduct a really sophisticated phishing attack. And this is about leveling up the understanding of the organization and of what AI can do and what to be aware of. So they're hearing it come in different ways, but there's so much potential with that technology for the workforce. I think it is around having the right tools and the right support so that they can you have to train your employees and develop them, and don't assume that most of them can just do this. Some of them can, but there are others that have never touched it, and so the other half of that stat is they're the ones that will have to be brought along and shown how to use it effectively. I also see a lot of people, John, using AI, and even with the pilot we just ran recently for one of the kind of major LLM players out there, people are using it, but not necessarily effectively. And so we had to run internal training on this is how you really maximize this platform and working in ways that may not have worked before, in the way that you prompt, and everyone's had to become a bit of a prompt engineer and understand about building like a project knowledge base, and so that when they ask questions or seek to support a document generation, for instance, it can do a really effective job.
We've done something similar. We've done our internal AI certification, both kind of broadly around, what is AI, how to use it, that sort of thing, but also our own product, Box AI. And we'll be rolling out to customers as well as a way for people to get up to speed. You mentioned people, and obviously there's a huge people component to all of this. And I'm sort of curious, we talk a little bit about roles and how are you seeing the evolution of roles, things like, knowledge managers. I don't know if you've had knowledge managers in your organization, if you do, or you have sort of adjacent role to that, how are you seeing them change? And then we'll get into a little bit more about, skills development and that sort of thing. Maybe you'll start with that, just role changes.
I think we're quite early on seeing the roles change. We recognize that this technology can augment a lot of roles, if not most roles, within the organization. I would say to date that most, for the pilots we've run and the initiatives that we've been standing up, people have really lent into it and embraced and gone, this is going to make, be much more impactful. It's going to allow me to perform my job better. We're always a capacity constrained organization. There's always more work to do that we can get through in all departments. And so the potential of using this to be more accurate first time, get to the point quicker. I know that some people use it to kind of digest really large documentation and really get the kind of main points out of there that might take someone hours, and I can do that in minutes. It's such a simple use case, but there's much more interesting ones. I think that come through. The area I've seen the change the most, and maybe this is a sign for others as well as we go on a journey, is in that engineering use case, because that's by far the most sophisticated AI use case we have today in Movember. We've really flipped the model on how to code and how to engineer. And in a traditional two-pizza team, and we look at the construct of who's in there, we're now realizing that, first of all, we need to put senior engineers into this problem space to really develop our own agentic AI workflows around these coding kind of modules. And so there's a modernization piece there, that there's new development pieces as well. But then when you kind of step out, you go, well, you're very much able to do that because you're kind of doing systems thinking and you're acting like, like a full stack developer and engineer and architect in one go. But what else do we need? How do we become more effective? We start seeing the emergence of new roles in the team, and we're not there yet in implementing them because people are wearing multiple hats. But our mind goes to next year's budget and how we're going to set our engineering teams up. And we're probably going to have some new roles that we didn't have before. For instance, prompt engineer. Like, how does a prompt engineer? Now, that might be an existing software engineer who has the role of prompt engineer for the team as well. But today, our lead architect is our prompt engineer, and he's the one that can kind of get the magic out of it. And so, I think it is challenging. I think the roles will change in engineering, and based on the new way that we're working. But it's deciding, and in general, our team have really went into it. I think we had a few questions early on around, will I still enjoy this if I do it? Right?
And do you mean developers specifically were asking the question, or more broad
Yeah,
developers?
developers. Right. Will I still enjoy this? But,
Huh.
so far, very positive. and people are enjoying this new ways because I think, in the engineering use case, most programs, they're problem solvers. You like to solve a problem. And there's this learning uptick that might be a bit confronting initially, then that makes you haven't had to do for a while. But once you've done that, and as you go through that process, that the problems we can now solve are greater and more complex. And I think there's a lot of enjoyment there. We do things like our documentation is automatically updated, John. So as code changes, it's automatically refreshing all the documentation surrounding it. That's a job I've never had an engineer tell me they love doing. So,
Right.
but it's something that the AI does really well, and everyone's very happy about that. The testing side, quality assurance is phenomenal. Like the coverage we've been able to get in a very short time frame through this is mind blowing compared to what we used to be able to do.
I think this is a really key point. It's taking some of the tasks that, frankly, a lot of people don't enjoy doing anyway, and allows them to focus on the more creative, more strategic aspects of the role. At least that's what we're seeing. And even if there's some initial skepticism, it seems to fade pretty quickly when people, when that light sort of clicks on.
Yeah, yeah. We talked a lot to our team early days, John, about how we hire an individual based on their experience, um, their skills, kind of personality characteristics, and so on, fit for the team. And then we
Yep.
put someone in a role that I would say 80% of what they do, any person could do, any engineer could do that. And really, there's only a really small portion of the time in that role that their uniqueness is brought to the role. I see that in lots of different roles. And one of the flips here is that with the AI supporting more of that kind of tedious manual stuff that you don't need to do as much of anymore, you bring more of you, bring more of your unique position, like what was your unique experiences and how you can have more of that involved. And it might be more thinking time, you know.
How do you think it's affected you as a leader when you think about, both using these tools as a leader, but then also leading the organization through using these tools? Like, do you have a sense of how you've changed?
Initially super excited about the idea of this. Also a little bit pessimistic as to, well, let's see this play out. A lot of new vendors emerging. We've seen these kind of things pop up before and then not quite hit the mark. And where will they go? To be absolutely blown away with the pace of this technology as it's coming to the market and what it can do. It was always on the inside and wanting to see this come to life, but maybe a little bit more reserved in, expectation of what's here to having to jump in a lot more and going, no, no, if we think we can wait 2, 3 years to see this technology play through and how to use it, we'll just be playing catch up. And
Right.
so needing to move to a much faster pace and understanding of the technology. So I get hands on with it. It's really now about getting the whole organization to adopt though and to leverage this where it makes sense.
Well, and I imagine your peers in leadership at Movember probably are also at varying points along that continuum of being pessimistic or not pessimistic, but maybe a little skeptical of what's possible or how quickly it will happen, and others maybe fully leaning in. Have you had to bring the team along, not just the team that works for you, but also the leadership team along, and also properly manage expectations about how much of an effect this will have?
I'm probably able to pull it back a little bit at times now. So I think our leadership team's always be, really open to the idea of this and very keen to see how it can kind of come through. There's definitely some reservations as to are parts of our organization ready to embrace this? Like, could we pull this into one of our core functions, like finance, or marketing, and really adopt it, in a wholesale way? And there's a bit of a journey and learning to go on, which is totally natural. I think the thing that changes is that you're just seeing the use cases in the industry now pop up every day, and just more and more information is flowing out there. And so whether it's board directors or just being immersed in the industry, what you're hearing and seeing, it's causing a lot of interest for this. But recognizing it's change, and November's really good at adding stuff to do and adding more things to do, and they're not very good at taking off other things and slowing down at times. So that's just the nature of who we are, and sort of wanting to lean into mental health and really drive change. And so there's always like, let's go.
I would imagine part of the message is that this technology, these and it's not just AI, but technology generally is really an enabler of the mission. and it's not just something to do for fun, but it actually helps you get to where you're trying to get to faster or more effectively with maybe fewer of the same resources. Has that been kind of core to your message to other stakeholders?
Yeah, absolutely. So when we talk about like why using AI, like I mentioned it comes back to because it can make us better and does that in a
Right.
number of different ways. And I guess when we think about AI as well, we do put it into three camps, and we're still working through the answer for this. We haven't done necessarily know what's going to go into the three buckets on the camps. So one is, where do we want to be leader in AI? Where does it make sense for us to break ground and really lean in? And for instance, the modernization we're doing with Cloud there, with some of our other partners, has been quite new and cutting, and that made a lot of sense for us to take that opportunity on. There's a second piece, which is around where we're a fast follower. We can allow others to carve the way, but once it's available to us, we'll adopt it because there's huge efficiency plays for us and it makes more sense. And then there's a third category, which is where will we not use AI? Where will we deliberately remain human? And a lot of that comes into our communication and interaction with others. Movember is it's a movement built on people, and so we very much need to hold and preserve what is authentic and true about our organization. However, um, it's easy in the individual case to see it that way. Is another challenge when we think on a global scale. So while we're reaching millions of people in a very short window of time, for instance, over a campaign, technology, you couldn't do it without technology, and AI has a role to play as we go along on that journey. More in the use case of, I think, making sure that when people are participating in Movember, so fundraisers or donors that are a part of this and interested in men's health, like how do we get you the right? And we've got so much information about men's health. How do we make it relevant to you? That's one way AI can be really powerful of coming through and giving you really quality information. And maybe it doesn't connect with you, but that's easy then for the AI to determine that wasn't right. And here's the other path to go down. It could have been more heavier and slower in the past. So
Well, I love that idea of just in terms of maintaining authenticity, being really deliberate about areas where you say, we're not going to use AI for this thing because it has to be from us and it has to be genuine and authentic. And I think that's a great way to think about things. Um, for me, it's something like if I'm sending an email to my broad team or to one person or to a customer, I'm not going to use AI to write that, right? I'm just not. If I'm doing, if someone's doing a mass email for a marketing campaign, well, maybe that is appropriate to do that as long as it conforms to, your voice and your brand and everything else. So being very thoughtful about it, I think is very important.
yeah, so we've set that up in our AI framework, enablement framework, and it's around part of that is we've got principles, and so those principles talk to those points. And we give examples of like we can use it here, but we wouldn't use it here at this point in time as we go on our journey. But it's that authentic voice, John, right? Like even though the AI can generate a very authentic voice, um, if it's not authentic, then does it hold the same value? And probably for us, it doesn't at the stage. But behind the scenes and what it can do for scale and volume, I think it's pretty exciting.
Yeah. Well, and like you said, you're not setting rules that are going to last forever. We all know this is moving quickly. And so what you might say is off limits today, maybe 6 months from now or a year from now, you'd say, actually, it's a great tool for that use case.
Yeah,
We'll see.
absolutely.
So we're still, I think, in the early innings of all this. Are you willing to share an early failure or a pilot that you tried that didn't work out? And you're like, okay, we're going to move on from that. You don't have to be too specific, but particularly, it's not so much about the thing itself, but more lessons taken away from that maybe would be useful for others.
Well, like I said, we're pretty early on in our
Yeah.
journey around this. At least with the generative AI capabilities and the agentic AI componentry that's within there. I would say we're about 7 or 8 months into that engineering use case. They're really shipping the model on how we develop. And we're already 3 tool sets in. We've already shifted multiple times. So maybe less about that was wrong and a mistake, but more that it's moved so quickly around us, we've needed to be nimble to move as the industry is moving. And there's things that we built 6 months ago that are now just features of technology IDs, for instance, are there that rely on just all this effort to now it's available. So there is this question mark here on how long do you wait and watch what's happening before sort of jumping in and getting stuck into that. Um, We probably thought it would be easier than it was, to be honest. It's been much harder um, to build out that engineering modernization workflow, that agentic flow that's been in there. And, we got caught up in it, getting caught in itself and constantly trying to fix defects and then introducing new ones. And, there's a whole lot of techniques and patterns now for those things, but they're kind of emerging as we were leveraging and laying the groundwork for that. So, and we're still only about a third of the journey through getting in that space. But on the whole, it's still super positive. Like the failures, those issues are all just part of the learning cycle. And um, I don't think it's possible to go and kind of take this type of technology on and implement it and get it right first time, right? When we're just not there. And um, in the type of use case that we're adopting and what we would go through, which is why we would be sort of a bit more reserved, say, using inner health impact, like delivering something that was, facing man by an AI in it. We would want to go through a lot more checks and balances before that came out on that side. So different risk tolerances for internal versus external, and then different data types as well.
Right. Yes, that makes perfect sense. And we're not dealing with health, information ourselves, but we thought a lot about, enabling for example, our support organization to use AI to get better answers to customers. It's very different than letting customers get their own answers with AI and running the risk that we give them some bad guidance, right? So the bar is higher, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
totally agree. So I want to talk a little bit about as we work towards wrapping up here, three areas that I think about a lot in the world of customer success are the idea of delivering value, culture and change, and the experience that we provide. And so I want to ask you a couple of questions on those three dimensions super quickly, relatively quick. When you think about value and delivering value, how do you define and measure the value that AI or any new technology, arguably, is bringing to Movember?
I think you get a pretty good test in talking to the individuals involved in this. And that's not how I would fully measure an ROI on this. But given how nascent it is and how early days we are, you get really great feedback from the team as to, are you enjoying this? Is it improving things? Well, why is it improving? So we've done, there's just the conversations to be had. We've done with the pilot we recently did for our generative AI platform. We've done studies on it and we've actually tested and it got quite pointy around like, what are the efficiency gains? What are the things you don't like? What do you like? And so we're building this kind of pulse survey around how is this working for you? Is it improving quality of your role? You enjoying your role more? Has it taken away things that were distracting you from kind of the main point of value that you have? And so we get a lot of different pieces of feedback, qualitative and quantitative in that. When I think about ROI though, in kind of the bigger investment parts that we're doing, not to necessarily go back to that modernization one, but that and in general, we can see real kind of value return on that. Like what we're able to do with AI would have taken us, multiple years and a lot more people to achieve that scope. So there's a real dollar return on those pieces. I'm a little low to lead with the dollar return on any of this at the moment because I'm more interested because it's evolving so quickly of this idea that, AI can help us be better. And so how does that manifest itself within an organization and where does it make sense? But in order to get the investment up and to have the funds available to purchase those tools and have a small team to support it, there has to be some kind of revenue impact to that, to the upside on that or cost optimization that we do look for within
Right.
the law.
Probably it sounds like a little early to get really hard ROI, but you know that you're deriving value because of the user experience or how quickly people are to get things done. And you're beginning to measure those things.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the things to test, John, is how many employees are requesting access to these things as well, and that has not slowed down as they see their colleagues and peers in our pilots. We've got a backlog of people that want access to this technology that we've not yet opened up, but it will come in a couple of months as we go through. So there's a bit of a limitness there as to how well it's going. Probably the thing we didn't talk about there is the quality of the output and how actually is the quality changing. I can definitely see it in the technical use cases that the quality assurance side to what we're doing massively improved. I'd be a little more interested to see how that might help in a more general setting, say, in an operations setting within the team and what that's meant. Um, so that would be designed, I think those kind of measures would be designed specifically around the initiatives we do. Uh, and I should have mentioned, but it's part of us having a register of use cases that are approved and a framework, the enablement framework. Part of that framework is to measure. So it is to come back at 6 months, 12 months as to what has this achieved? Is it working as intended, or it weren't, and have that open dialogue.
That's fantastic. And again, having that framework as a guide for all of this, I think it's got to be very, very valuable to you. And I would imagine that you evolve the framework as you're learning too. It's not a static thing. Can you say a bit about user experience? You did mention one of the measures of success is, are you getting other people who don't have access to these things clamoring for them? And how does that show up from a user experience perspective?
So if we take the generative AI pilot we've been running with one of the big platform providers that's out there, it is very much a kind of a hop out siloed experience. So you jump into that tool and you'd be using that. The experience itself was pretty good. We had to do some upskilling and development of people in that pilot. So then you had to use it. But in that time frame, what we're now seeing is the integration. And so, and I know this plays out in Box as well. And so that platform is now connected up to a lot of our other systems, whether it's email like Outlook and Slack and CRM and other parts. So now this tool has become a lot more connected and able to query these different data silos that were there. And so people aren't necessarily hopping out as much. It's also being exposed through other channels, so people can use it in different ways, and kind of still seeing that paint out. But just seeing this kind of connectedness and glue really rapidly come into the ecosystem. It kind of feels like every week or two, there's a new thing there that you can have a look at and to leverage.
I think you're completely right about the interconnectedness. And I think what we're going to see is that integrations are going to become a lot less rigid, code and API driven today. It's going to be agent to agent tomorrow. And that's going to, I think, make it easier to connect things up in a way that feels very natural to users. But, we'll see how that evolves. You can already, as one simple product thing, and, with the Box Slack integration, you can have access to Box content in Slack and ask AI right within your Slack thread, as just one really simple example of just do the work there, get access to your content, and get the benefit of AI in there.
Yeah, I love those use cases, and less hops, but just that kind of utility and convenience factor of being able to do it. And we're
Yeah.
thinking about that too, John. We're thinking for next year's campaign, like how do we stick MCP servers or other exposures on our fundraising tech? So, it's hard to predict how it's going to shift, but in 12 months time, people might want to register through their AI for Movember, or maybe they want to donate through their AI to Movember. And so, but even to start to jump on that as well and start to explore how might we make that possible in our ecosystem? Because it'll be here really quickly based on the current pace of change. But super, super interesting, exciting as well, and kind of breaking ground in a whole new era of fundraising that maybe we haven't done before. So
You mentioned MCP, and I was actually going to ask you what emerging trends are you excited about that may have the most impact on Movember? So MCP potentially to help with fundraising, make it really easy for folks to do that. Any other ideas that you're kicking around or excited about?
I think sticking to that tenet around authentic messaging, when we think about like Movember's reach and our fundraising platform reach all around the globe, I think there's a really interesting AI use case there to maybe tailor the content that's relevant for certain markets and individuals, but down to a micro level, so that if you're living in a given city, like how do we make sure that Movember resonates with you in work that we're doing that is absolutely relevant for you, that maybe is less relevant to someone on the other side of the planet, in a small town. And so I think there's some potential there for us to kind of cut data and localization and geography in different ways, using some of the AI smarts to help us get there, whilst also kind of staying authentic though, using our actual words and our data
Mhm.
within there. So I think we'll see some of that play out as we go forward. I think there's a big question mark on Movember's role in health and AI and what we'll do here. And we've got some partners at the moment that are playing in AI, and there's an amazing initiative in the UK at the moment around cancer. And so there's a platform that will launch in 2026 there to provide for free support to men going through prostate cancer and breast cancer. And in that construct, we're an information provider. We have a really awesome website called True North, which has a lot of information around survivorship in cancer and kind of managing your journey and connecting you with really good quality info that's not out there today. And so we support that AI through information, but there's a question mark on, is our play information or is our play AI as well? And over time, so unanswered at the moment, John, but that's kind of where we put our mind to going forward as to what is our role and what are the role of others in that ecosystem.
Yeah. And who do you partner with and who does what? I mean, there's so much opportunity and so much, like you said, unknown right now about how it will all play out. Any predictions?
There's no prediction in that. There's, the reality is that, some ones are quite advanced, but a lot of us are on catch up and leaning in heavy now, but, racing against something that's faster than us as well. Sorry, I'm not sure yet where it's all out, but I think it'll be pretty positive whichever way we go. We'll lay some bets in health, for instance. So over the coming years in the space, that will be super interesting. I'll see them play out.
Do you have any tips for a fellow CIO, CTO who's navigating this journey, maybe not quite as far along as you all are? Actionable tips, any guidance you would offer, mistakes to avoid, things to think about? What would you say to someone who's, 3 to 6 months behind you?
Coming back to the early part of our conversation, putting in place a good framework for managing AI. And there's a lot of, a lot of us are probably working with the big, tech players, big cloud platform providers out there. Have a lot of insight as well into how others are implementing AI in their frameworks. And so I'll be leveraging the partner ecosystem like we have to kind of bring current thinking and sort of best practices to bear. I'd start managing a board now, as well as the employee base. So board executives, people leaders, and the core workforce, depending on the nature of the organization as well, obviously. But I'd be on the front foot with managing at all levels, and getting the right governance in play as well, and not necessarily over engineering this thing. Like the idea of a 3-year strategy for me in AI just doesn't connect as well as, say, a 3-year technical architecture vision does. There's a lot clearer as to how, and you could, that goes on, but with the AI is moving so quickly that I suspect after year 1, you'd rewrite it. The other tip, and I give this tip not just to my level, it's everyone in the team, is you got to get out. If it's very easy to get caught inside the organization with the pressures and priorities that are within that organization, and we all fall into that trap at times. I do most of my learning, John, just getting out and talking to other organizations and other CIOs, CTOs, and leaders and on how they're doing this. And, that's where most of my learning happens. Also, do more of that and share the ideas. And some of it for me is informal, like we have coffee catch-ups, so the small groups in Melbourne, in Australia. We've got a community there, but I go along to various meetups and conferences and kind of get involved. And usually my biggest learning opportunity is I'm not so much interested in the kind of tech partner and what they're promoting necessarily and what's going on there. I'm much more interested in hearing from others and what they've done and where they're on. So got to do that this year in the US, in the nonprofit space, and I had some really amazing examples of AI being implemented and really starting to kind of help us think about how might we approach this and go on a journey around it.
Well, that idea of sharing and learning from others outside of your organization is really key. And actually one of the main reasons we're even doing the podcast, right, is to give folks like you an opportunity to share what you've learned and help others avoid maybe some of the early mistakes and learn from each other. So, I really, really appreciate you, Movember, the time you've taken, here today, but also the long partnership we've had together, and really for sharing the incredible journey that you've had in bringing this AI innovation to Movember, and helping advance the mission. So appreciate your time. I think your insights on balancing the technological advancement with human-centric values and the practical examples that you've shared on implementation in the nonprofit sector have just been really, really valuable. And I hope people get a lot from it. To folks who are out there listening, I just want to say, we are releasing this in November. It is the signature month of action for Movember. So if you can get involved, if you can donate, please do. You can get involved with one of the many, many groups that are out there. We appreciate it. And I'm sure Graham does as well. And, we really appreciate you taking the time to listen, to learn. And we thank you for joining us on the AI First podcast. Until next time, keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible with AI and consider growing a Mo for a good cause. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for tuning into the AI First podcast, where we go beyond the buzz and into the real conversations shaping the future of work. If today's discussion helped you rethink how your organization can lead with AI, be sure to subscribe and share this episode with fellow tech leaders. Until next time, keep challenging assumptions, stay curious, and lead boldly into the AI First era.